Meeting of the Ames City Council to order for August 27th, 2019. Welcome to everybody who's here. Good evening, Council. We have Councilman Martin on the phone this evening also, so we got a full council. So we'll go ahead and start tonight with the first item will be a proclamation. National Overdose Awareness Day. Whereas thousands of individuals die every year from drug overdoses, and whereas these deaths are preventable when resources and education exist, and whereas Ames is not immune from this epidemic, and whereas Story County has established the opioid task force to combat the problem, and whereas all residents can be a part of solving this epidemic. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim August 31st, 2019 as National Overdose Awareness Day in honor of those whose lives were taken too soon and in the hopes that by education and access to services, we may help others get well. Ms. Tasha, I'll let you introduce those that are with you and make a few comments.
All right, thank you. Well, my name is Tasha, and I am the mother of Tashara Burnside. She passed away December 17, 2016, to a synthetic opioid overdose here in Ames. This is my son, Devon. I have spent the last almost 2.5 years fighting for change. And when I talk to you about change, I feel that Ames, our community, has been a blueprint for what I would like to see as a mother in our surrounding communities, how they can support families that have been struck by such a tragedy. I do have a little something to say, but I think maybe Devon may have something to say as well.
Hello, I am Devon Taronis. I am her son. And for starters, I'd like to thank each and every single one of you for coming out tonight. It truly does mean a lot. I'd also like to thank the City of Ames for honoring my mother and I, my family, but most importantly, my sister Tashara. As some of you may know, like she just said, Tashara passed away in December of 2016. And to be honest with you, it's been a rough coming up on 3 years actually. And okay. Okay, sorry about that. You know, it's nice to see everyone out here showing a willingness to fight, to seek and to demand change, because that's the only way it's going to come. And this fight for change is going to be hard. No one said it was going to be easy, but I believe we can do it. I know we can do it. And as speaking for my family, the support this community has shown us we will be forever thankful for it, and we cannot thank you enough. During this fight, during this fight, there are going to be days where you feel like giving up, where you feel like there's no point, and that you're just fighting a continuous, never-ending uphill battle. But I'm here to say that when that day does come, keep your head up, stay strong, stay focused, stay motivated, because one day, and hopefully one day soon, change will come, and that light at the end of the tunnel on the other side will be a brighter tomorrow for all of us. Again, thank you for all coming out, and have a wonderful evening.
I really, really want to take a minute to thank Jeff. Without you, I don't know how we would have been able to make this happen. My task force team, everyone who's a part of that team. I mean, thank you just doesn't seem enough. Your continual support outside of here, Sherry, you reaching out consistently, checking in on me, is so important to me. The city, I was born and raised here, and to have a community come out and support something that is so dear to my heart, I wish I didn't have to stand here before you tonight and talk about losing her. I don't want this to define her. She was so much more than the overdose itself. But I've always said change will come. And for someone who's impatient, there's been days that it hasn't come soon enough for me, and there's still so much more work to do. So when you hear about supporting our police department or our communities by having community get-togethers to support Narcan, that's so important. In our community alone, since 2016, we've been able to save 9 lives here in Ames because of that. So if you have a chance, please support our Ames Police Department. It's needed, and if it just saves one life is so important. I have just a little bit of something to read, and then I'll be done, and I'll quit talking. One of the things that I find that has helped me on a daily basis, and it's really been a part of that change and trying to make a difference. So it's called The Starfish Story. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. But it talks about, it's an old man walking along the beach, came upon a child sifting through debris left by the night's tide. Every so often, he would pick up a starfish and then he would throw it back to the sea. The old man asked him the purpose of his efforts, and he responded, "The tide has wasted the starfish, or has washed the starfish onto the beach. They will die unless you throw them back." The old man looked around at the miles of beach. "There are more starfish than you can ever save. You cannot make a difference." The child bent down to pick up another starfish and sent it back to the ocean. Then he looked up at the old man, smiled, and replied, "I can make a difference for that one." So that's kind of my motto. It is my motto. Whether it's one or a million, I'd like to save everybody. For one person, we can make a difference. You know, it just takes us stepping outside maybe our comfort zone, breaking the stigma, ending the stigma and silence surrounding drug addiction and overdose. And keep in mind, everybody that goes through something like this is somebody's child. So that's the most important thing. And I thank you guys so much tonight for taking a little bit of your council meeting and listening. We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Hala.
Can you share what the opioid task force does?
Oh, yeah. We're going to have Carrie share about the opioid task force.
Hi, my name's Carrie Williams. I'm from Community and Family Resources. So the opioid task force has continued to work on providing options for the community through like community conversations where we invite people to come and learn about opioids. The last meeting focused on assessment and treatment options in Ames. They have also worked with the Ames Police Department to come up with a grant that provides bags that will safely dispose of medication so that they cannot be used in any way, shape, and form. And they have been passing those out amongst the community also. They have also presented to the women's voters in Ames regarding opioids and treatment options, and all of these are very well attended. They currently have been working on a vision and a mission statement. So the vision statement is advocacy for a healthy community, and the mission statement is to connect resources to those seeking positive lifestyle changes and providing education and support to community members and professionals. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 9th at 9 o'clock. It is for an hour at the St. Andrew's Church on Colorado Avenue. And everybody is welcome to attend and have a voice and to be able to help Ames in any way that they can through the task force. You're welcome to come.
Well, thank you for coming and for your efforts on behalf of this epidemic that does exist, and Commander Huff for your leadership. I know that you've been very key to that as well too. So I'll present this proclamation, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to consent agenda. Do council want to pull any item this evening? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve.
Move consent.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to public forum. This is the
Can you
opportunity.
guys hear me? I'm having a very difficult time hearing y'all.
Sorry, we didn't. We just voted on consent. David, is that do you vote aye?
Yes, I do vote aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll try and speak up louder. All right, we move on to public forum. This time is set aside for the public to address council on any topics that are not on the agenda this evening. Do anyone in the audience wish to address council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public forum. Move on to item 39.
Can you guys hear me? Or
Yeah.
can you hear me okay? Oops, sorry. Where's the mic? Can you guys hear me? All right. First of all, Justin,
Would you please name and address, please?
I'm getting there. It's Justin Gersema, and I live at 1402 Kellogg Avenue in Ames. And I just wanted to come. I understand that the Healthy Life Center is on the forum for later, so I won't talk about that now. But I just wanted to come here and thank you guys for putting the sidewalk in so that I can walk from my house to the bus, because I was here in April, and I just wanted to come up here and say thank you guys for getting that done for me. And I hope that, you guys can add more sidewalk around town, because there's other places that still need it for safe walking.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's not very often people come and say thanks for an effort,
Yeah,
so
we
thank you very
appreciate
much
that.
for coming and expressing
well,
appreciation.
I just appreciate being able to walk to the bus stop
Yep.
without having to walk in the street.
Yep.
Because that was my only option before the sidewalk was put in. And
Yeah.
like I said, I know there's sidewalk that needs to be put in up and down Grand. So, it would be nice to have that put in, because, especially on busy streets,
Very
So-
good.
And I'll keep my Healthy Life Center comments till later.
Thank you.
So Justin, one thing, so this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. We haven't had much input from people in your situation. And
Yeah.
so if there are other areas where we're not attentive to the concerns of the community, please stay in touch with us.
All right. What's the best way to get in touch with you? I'm sorry, what was your name?
I'm Tim Garton.
Tim, okay.
So any of the council members you can reach out to and share concerns, but you brought to our attention something that needed to be addressed, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so feel free to continue this conversation.
Okay.
I would
Because
say-
like I
I'd
said,
say-
I know there's other areas of town that are in need of sidewalk, and especially if it's a busy street, I don't think you want people walking in the street, So, but I can definitely let you know those areas once I endure them. And I'm also letting Brad know, Becker, that works at the city, like when trees need to be trimmed, because somebody can easily run into them if they hang low.
Thank you.
So, thank you again.
Okay. Does anybody else like to address council under public forum? Okay, we'll move on to item 39, resolution of support for Healthy Life Center. Steve and Mark, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, I think in a previous meeting, the council asked that a resolution be drafted for the city council, so we've done that for you. It's pretty extensive, gives a little bit of the history and some of the background, and we offer it to you, whether you want all of it, you want to modify it, that's fine. I don't know if we put too much in or we left something out, but it's here for you to consider for resolution support that you requested. I think, Mark, there's some questions on how far the council can go in expressing the support for the bond issue, and he can give you a briefing on that.
Yeah, so when we were drafting this, and I got the first draft, I was a bit concerned about the very last part of the last sentence in the be it resolved paragraph, where it encourages the citizens to vote yes. And that's because the Iowa Code expressly prohibits spending any public money on advocacy for a bond issue. But that same section of the code also says that that this section shall not be construed to prohibit, a governing body of a governmental entity from expressing their opinion on it. So. But I thought, well, maybe that's a little too far because we're, not just saying we support it, but encouraging people to vote yes. So I called Megan Tooker, who's the executive director of the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Finance Disclosure Board, talked to her, and she assured me it was okay to say this. She has approved other governmental entities and having similar resolutions where they encourage the public to vote yes, and so she said that's okay. So it doesn't violate the law.
Questions, comments?
So I was the one who asked that we flesh this out a little bit rather than just having a blanket vote affirmation. I think this is fabulous. I think it explains some of the main reasons why we're supportive of it. So I appreciate the extra effort the staff went through to put this together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll open up public comment since at least one individual wants to speak. So if you want to address council on this resolution before action is taken, please approach the podium.
I'm not real sure how this works. Is this like the whole life center in general?
Yeah, tonight what the council is doing is they'll be voting on adopting a resolution in support of the Healthy Life Center bond referendum. So it's just basically communicating to the community that the council is in support of this project tonight.
Okay. Well, is there more on the itinerary or whatever you want to call it about the Healthy Life Center?
Not this evening, there's not. No, this is it.
Okay. I have some questions about it. Can I ask them?
So one thing, Justin, to know, there are going to be 3 informational meetings coming up where there'd be an opportunity for you to dialogue with the team that's very knowledgeable about the Healthy Life Center. And Susan, if you have those, just to correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Wednesday and Thursday in the public library. We'll have one of our staff people touch base with you just to confirm. Oh, Keith's here, sorry. See you back there. So Keith will touch base with you here in a few minutes to answer any questions. But Keith, while we're just talking about this, you want to just tell us the times of the informational meetings while I brought this up?
Yeah, with three additional meetings that will be coming up. Wednesday, August 28th, tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the library, Ames Public Library. Then Thursday, August 29th at 4 p.m. in the Ames Public Library. And then Wednesday, September 4th at 7 p.m. in the Ames Public Library.
Can you repeat the third one?
Sure. Wednesday, September 4th at 7 p.m.
All right.
And what's the format of that, Keith?
What we do is we take about 35 to 40 minutes, go through a PowerPoint, go through all the information, the concept, the design, some of the components. We go through the financial aspect, and then we open it up for questions.
Can you email me the PowerPoint, because I have disability functions built into my computer?
Sure. Yeah, and I can talk to you after we're done here, and I
right.
can get your email address and
That's fine.
everything.
I do have one question about the whole yes thing. Where do I get a sign that says that I'm voting no?
I would talk,
What?
where you vote no, you said?
Yeah.
You would have to go ahead and contact the individual or the group that's involved with that campaign and that's not associated with the city.
All right. I was just curious because I have some issues with a few things about the Healthy Life Center, and I was just wondering
Right?
how I voice those.
Yep.
But I guess they might answer my question as I look through that PowerPoint.
Okay, very good.
So
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comment.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate that. I think that I applaud council's desire to pass a resolution. I think this is a very, no, I think it is a very important project for our community in terms of strengthening the community. And as as referred to in the resolution, and I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but one is we have an unprecedented partnership with 6 different entities in the community. We're seeking to strengthen the community through healthy living, and it's going to be accessible and enjoyable to people from all ages and all socioeconomic status in the community as well too. So I think it would be a real asset to our overall community. So, any other comments from the council? Otherwise, entertain a motion on the resolution.
I just have one other comment, and maybe this is sort of directed at Keith, but I know that we've had some questions about accessibility for the Healthy Life Center, and that we have considered those concerns. I'm wondering if you're going to be covering those accessibility considerations in these informational meetings so that people who have those questions will have them answered.
Yeah, well, we don't go into a lot of specifics with it, but the entire facility will be ADA compliant. What ADA is Americans with Disabilities Act, so we'll be compliant with that, and a lot of the features that we will have within the facility, will be accessible. So in addition to ADA compliance, but such as the zero depth entry pool, there is an elevator to get to the second floor. We'll have programmatic alternatives for people. There will be lifts, there will be ramps, just a lot of different things. So the whole idea is, again, with it is all people, all ages, all abilities, all socioeconomic status. So we do touch it on a little bit, and then sometimes we have had some sessions where people ask specific questions, and then we go a little deeper into it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Martin? Aye.
Barton?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Beatty Hansen?
Aye.
Ferrieri?
Aye.
Betcher?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving on to item 40, resolution approving motion denying request from Iowa State University to collaborate co-brand principles of community for inclusion in public buildings. And council, after our last meeting, I actually had a meeting scheduled already with Dr. Stewart, who's the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at Iowa State University. And we actually discussed these principles and some of the things that have been talked about and referred to. And if it is acceptable to council this evening, he's open to a meeting with Steve, with me, with a member of the council, to just talk about how can we try and make them, be, focusing on being, community, focused, not just student focused. Now, they have invested a lot of money and they have a lot of stuff already printed. And so we're not talking about having this being all undone. But I'm just submitting to you this evening the option of tabling this and allowing us to do a little additional work in the background versus trying to parse through all these from the dais. But if you have other desires, we certainly can move forward if you want to go ahead. I think it's not the question of the principles, it's more or less the wording that supports the principles is what was being talked about.
Well, I've had concerns that the Iowa State principles, which are very strong in their sense of community among students, they have not been very strong in helping students understand that they're also part of a broader community. And in fact, many broader communities. I guess David is not going to be part of our community right now, but so I really hope that we'll be able to discuss the possibility of broadening Iowa State's principles of community so that we include Ames, maybe the state, the nation, the world, something other than just the Iowa State campus. Because I think so far, from what I hear, those principles of community have had an impact on the students, and they're being used regularly in the onboarding campaigns. And so I'd like to see those principles incorporate the city in some way. So I would wholeheartedly support tabling this issue and having further discussions to see what we could accomplish if we were to explore those kinds of options.
And I just want to, again, restate, I'm not saying that Iowa State is going to redo their their verbiage. But it's something that, since they have taken the lead on it, I think it's good to get their feedback and make sure that we understand what we're trying to accomplish. So, anyway. So, direction, you want to continue discussion on this item tonight? You want to table it?
Is there a downside of us going forward with it? I mean, does it change anything if we go ahead and say, they've reached out to us and we say, yes, we agree with that? It seems like this is a philosophy that we have embraced as city council already. I'm just trying to understand what we would gain by tabling it.
I sort of feel like if we move ahead with this, we're moving ahead on parallel tracks instead of in some sort of unified way.
Yeah,
And
it's not really a co-branding exercise.
Yeah.
I would say.
it's more like our brand kind of matches your brand, but we aren't together on that branding. And so I think discussions about how we could unify those brands in some way would be welcome to me. And I spend a lot of time around students, so I would love to see them thinking more about Ames as their home and being part of the community.
So my only thought is that they have these printed, they've been adopted, it's something the university is going to do regardless of what we do tonight. So what are the risks or the downsides of us participating in this year while we continue to have discussions for another year or a different year to integrate them more than they are now?
I'm not thinking table it for a very long time. I anticipated that the meeting John was talking about was going to occur in the not-so-distant future. So I don't have any problem with moving forward in some way in the near future, but I would rather we not move forward until that discussion occurs.
Yeah, I mean, if the duration of the tabling isn't long, then I think it'd be okay, because the downside would be that if the university is like, oh yeah, let's modify so that so we can all use them, the same, we're going to have to then reprint everything. We just, we'll have to remodify them anyway. So, if the tabling is short, I think that's suitable. I mean, I think we all agree that the principles here, yes, we can get behind them, respect and purpose and cooperation. But just the language in there about how, there's refer kind of specifically to the university, if they are interested in tweaking that language, if we did it just all at once rather than several times.
Well, I think it's realistic Dr. Stewart has demonstrated a lot of flexibility schedule-wise, so I think it's very realistic to get a meeting scheduled before the next council meeting and and then we can report back. So try and keep it to a 2-week turnaround, and if worst case scenario, it becomes the end of September, but have that as an absolute, deadline.
Does it need to be tabled to a date certain? Or just tabled to?
I think that would be the preference. But I think if you want to just table it for this evening, knowing that's going to come back as, we're not going to sit on this for a long period of time. I'll make a motion.
So I would move that we table this item until after discussions have occurred with the university.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, item 41, general obligation corporate purpose bonds. Council, you should have a handout that was distributed just before the meeting, the results of the bids, I believe, and so Dwayne and...
That's correct. Sorry to interrupt. We accepted bids this morning on the sale of bonds to support our 1920 CIP plan. Everything went pretty much as you've seen going forward. I will mention one item. You always notice that you authorize allowance for costs, and also that we could take down some premium on these bonds. And today we had very good interest rates, and we believe we'll have a need for some additional funds for the radio system, but there will be no real additional cost because we can still do it within the same debt service. So we have asked PFM to size the bonds to take down $300,000 of that additional premium. But everything you've seen budget-wise will be the same. We'll just take down a little bit of that. So this is Suzanne Gerlach from PFM. They're our municipal financial advisors, help us through this process, including marketing these bonds, and she'll talk a little bit about our results this morning.
Yes. Good evening. So we received 6 bids today from 37 different firms with true interest costs ranging from 1.62% to 1.72%. That's not a typo. The interest rates begin with 1. I would say that the bond market has been in somewhat of a free fall with interest rates dropping almost 40 basis points since June, since we started the bond issuance process. So excellent timing to be in the market. We did, of the 6 bids, the winning bid came from Robert W. Baird, who is runs the Midwest Syndicate that had a large group with 30 people participating in their syndicate, with the cover bid coming from Janie Montgomery Scott. Only 2 basis points, 0.02% between the winning bid and the second place bid, and only 10 basis points, 0.1% between the first place and the sixth place bidder today. Throughout the bond issuance process, Moody's Investor Service did affirm the city's AA1 credit rating, but 1 notch below the highest rating possible of AAA. So very good positive comments about the strong fiscal management of the city, and just overall kind of excellent credit from the city. Pricing today. So the AAA scale, these were non-bank qualified, which means we issued over $10 million today, 11.5, and so that's a little bit different market. Historically, in a lot of years, the city issues less than $10 million for the CIP, and so we would expect the credit spreads, the basis points to be a little more, but still only 20 basis points over the AAA scale today, which was tremendous pricing. Actually, 7 basis points better than I had estimated. So it was just a great day overall. It turned into great low rates, lower than anticipated. Didn't need any of the timing cushion. Rates fell, and you priced better based on your credit than we would have anticipated. And as Dwayne mentioned, these bonds were structured to match the FY 2020 pre-levy that was approved through the budget process earlier this year. So your payment is within the pre-levy. So with that, any questions? Great news.
Any questions for Susan? For Dwayne? Great results. Thank you very much.
Very pleased.
All right. Entertain a motion on the resolution accepting bids and authorizing sale and issuance of general obligation bonds and amount to not to exceed. Is this excuse me, Dwayne? In the agenda, it says an amount not to exceed $11,880,000. Does that still remain the same for the motion?
Yes, that's the par amount, and that's the issuance is under that. The cash that we'll get in is, what, 12 million something, because there's some premium included in that.
Just make sure that the motion for the resolution that the amount's right, so it's not
That
to
is-
exceed $11,880,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Good clarification.
all right,
Move approval.
Second.
all right. Any discussion? Roll call?
Aye.
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 Very good. Thank you very much. All right, move on to item 42, update on changes to rental code. Sarah?
Okay, good evening. We're back with the 3 changes that you recommended, one small change that you recommended last time we were here, and we're opening it for public input so that we can hear from the community how they feel about the 3 changes. Just as a recap, the first one would make would make it a possibility for illegal rentals to be ineligible for a letter of compliance for 1 year after we discover that they're illegal. Also, the ability to add rent abatement to the toolbox, so we would be able to prohibit tenants from paying their rent if the landlord is not complying. And then the final one is to freeze bedrooms in owner-occupied properties in the near-campus neighborhoods, and that's kind of to close that loophole where people could potentially take their property off rental, add it back on with more bedrooms and more tenants. Any questions or clarification on those changes?
And Sarah, would you just share with the council and public what actions we've taken so far to try and get this out into the public as well, too?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we notified the ARA, the Ames Rental Association president, the president for the Central Iowa Board of Realtors, all neighborhood association representatives that planning has the list for, all of our rental permit holders, and the president of government, student body government.
And so far, have you gotten any response back to your email regarding this information?
Not a lot. A few questions, a few bits of clarification. I did resend the draft ordinance out today to a couple people just to clarify. I think there may have been some confusion on the freezing bedrooms and where it was applicable, if it was actually applicable to owner-occupied properties, and we clarified that it was when they become a rental, that's when the ordinance would be triggered. So owner-occupied properties we're not creating occupancy ordinances for them right now.
Questions for Sarah? Okay, I'm going to open up public input on this particular topic. Again, the process we've been going through has been trying to be very transparent, get information out to those who may be affected by this. Tonight is public input on the proposed changes to the ordinance. Then, based on the input and council direction this evening, then in 2 weeks we'll come back with the first reading of the ordinance, either as presented tonight or as amended. So. Public input is open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this particular topic?
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Ladd Grove, and my business address is 621 Main Street here in Ames, Iowa. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things with regard to the proposed ordinance that I think should be added. The first is in the rent abatement section. It provides that rent shall be abated when the building official determines that the owner has, after issuance of and I think you should insert 30-day notice. I think we need a reasonable time period to be notified of a problem, and I think 30 days ought to be an adequate time period. Anything less than that, I think, would be inappropriate, and if you think it ought to be longer than 30 days, I would have no problem with that, but I think 30 days would be a minimum amount. And then in the next line, B, where it says failed to remedy a condition, and I think you should insert under his control. There are going to be dangerous situations that can arise that are totally outside of the control of the owner of the property. And that's why I think you should insert that phrase to limit it to something which the owner can control. And just to give you a quick example of a dangerous situation, the neighbor has a pit bull and he lets it run at large. Well, it's certainly a dangerous situation, but totally out of the control of the owner. So, any questions anybody would like to ask?
I think the other question I have is that when you read the building official shall, is that what you said?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's may.
Yeah, because it was previously shall. I want to make sure you had the current draft, because the council did say, and change it to may versus being implicit, so, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Ladd?
So just to clarify, then, the suggestion that you're making on number 1 would be determines that the owner, after 30 days following the issuance of?
No,
Is that-
well, it should read, after issuance of a 30-day notice of violation of the chapter.
Do we already have, I'm curious if, like, did you have a time frame in mind, or is there a time frame that you would usually give people to respond to a notice before a penalty is kicked in?
So they certainly have an appeal period where I believe it's 30 days from the deficiency letter that they can appeal something. So we wouldn't issue a citation or do anything until that point. My only concern is that if it is for an essential service, if they're not being provided water or electricity, I'm not sure that we would want to wait 30 days, but maybe there's another solution to that than this tool.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public input for this evening. Council, and Sarah, do you want to, is there, based on Mr. Ladd's comments, anything else you want to add in terms of the essential services? Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a suggestion on?
No, I think if you want that added, that's acceptable. It's in line with everything else in the rental code.
So 30 days would be okay, even for an essential service that hasn't been
Yeah,
corrected?
you make a good point about that, I think. I sort of, I don't know, I feel like you probably have guidelines, or staff would use a different guideline for something like someone not having water than you would for a different type of risk, perhaps?
Yeah, I think in that instance, if they didn't have an essential service, we would probably make sure they're out of the unit. We would tell the landlord they need to find a different place for the night because we don't want them there. We don't want them there for 30 days, certainly. If it's a couple days, we might be able to work with it, but I don't know that rent abatement would be the solution in that instance.
Sure. Yeah.
So would that mean that the tenant could not take the advantage of rent abatement for those 30 days when the service is not functioning? I'm just trying to understand how that 30-day delay works.
So I think that would be saying that we're notifying you, landlord, that you have 30 days to correct this issue, or the tenant stops paying rent. That's what I understand from Lab.
So then I'm not quite sure where the essential service part that you were just talking about fits in. If you want the tenant removed from the house, would you be implying then that they would not be paying rent while they're removed from the house?
So through inspections, I guess I wouldn't be so concerned about what they are or aren't paying. I would just want the unit to be habitable. So whatever provisions are made between the landlord and the tenant, reimbursement, hotel room, whatever decision they make together is on them. I would just be saying this unit is not habitable in its current state. You can't have somebody here.
There's also the possibility that, somebody waits 20-some days with a problem before they even notify the city of it, because, the first thing a renter does isn't like, oh, you haven't fixed this problem a day ago, I'm going to call the city. And so if you all decide that this is something you want to pursue, I would highly want you all to consider 30 days after the initial complaint was made to the landlord, because it could be 25 days even before a renter, and that's just a number I'm throwing out there, before they even come to the city with the issue if a landlord's not fixing it. And that would basically give a 30-day extension at that point for a landlord to fix a problem that could potentially be dangerous to the person living there. In general, I don't think I'd support the 30-day thing, but that's not my decision, obviously.
Well, the way that it reads says the building official may order renovated when the building official determines that the owner has. So this is actually, to your example, if a student or if a renter waited 20 days to notify the building official, that's what they're talking about here in terms of how it's written. So I think that's taken care of, but I think your point about the 30 days, I think the essential service, and also the one that a condition that poses a substantial risk, to Mr. Ladd's point, a pit bull, for example, and I think that under their control, if you have a tenant that has a violent animal or whatever, that they can't control that. But
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just...
I feel like that's sort of taken care of in the rental code. Like, you're only talking about conditions that pose a substantial risk that are already part of the rental code.
Health safety code violations, yeah.
So John, to clarify, is our task tonight to receive any suggestions and try to make amendments tonight, or do we receive, like Mr. Grove, we received his input, do we then ask staff to go back and retool? I feel like we can just spend a lot of time wordsmithing this.
Right, so the goal is for council to give final direction to staff to come up with an ordinance that will be presented as a first reading, either at the next meeting or in 4 weeks if we had to, for sake of discussion. We want to get the final ordinance draft out to people and give them some time to look at it, but then we'll have our first reading and public input.
So would you want us to make a motion for staff to take a look at some of the things that Ladd has suggested?
Right, and then they can bring back another draft ordinance again. Again, we're trying to avoid changing this ordinance from the dais at the first reading, essentially. We want to have this thing done so we can go ahead and have the reading and move forward. So.
I'm not sure you want to give us direction to take a look at it. I think we need to know which ones.
What do you want to
change? Support, and then we can come up with wording that.
Or unless we're satisfied with it as it is.
Right, exactly.
So this proposal has to be read in light of Iowa Code Chapter 562A, and I'm apprehensive about doing this from the dais. I would rather have our legal staff make recommendations on that to make sure that it's done in concert with that code chapter. Ladd, we appreciate you reading this carefully, and you're the only one who showed up tonight to give us feedback, so we appreciate that.
All right, how about a motion?
So I would move that we direct staff to review the proposals made by Ladd Grove with respect to the 30-day notice and the issue of whether the substantial risk is under the control of the landlord.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Could you please repeat the motion for me?
Sure.
So I move that we direct staff to provide us with a memo or some kind of feedback with respect to the proposals that Mr. Grove made as to the 30-day notice, as well as whether the substantial risk is under the landlord's control.
Thank you.
I think, if I could just clarify, I think the goal would be is that you'd come back with a modification to this ordinance for you to look at one more time. The draft, it'd be another draft, taking these into account, not a memo or...
Well, I'm not prepared to go through this and wordsmith this tonight.
No, I understand.
Let's assume we'll have to check to see if it complies with the state law. The question is, do you want to add anything that requires a notice?
I'm not sure that I...
In A. And a 30-day notice has been suggested. Just tell us yes or no on that, and
That
we'll
was
see if we can put in there. The second one is, we won't talk about the language, but that the risk or the correction is required by the landowner. It's the property owner, not by the tenant. That's what he's saying. You don't have to be responsible for those.
I just think it's a little tricky. I think Sarah rightly pointed out, when it comes to essential services, the landlord hasn't been providing electricity. I don't want to give this landlord another 30 days to be negligent in providing this essential service. So
You wouldn't want to do it then.
Well, currently, it's sort of, it sounds to me like it would be at staff's discretion when to kick in the fact that they've been provided notice, right?
I thought Tim's first motion,
Kind of
the
okay
one that
with
I
me.
seconded, didn't mention a memo or
Well,
anything like that, and I thought
Yeah,
that giving
I'm-
feedback on it meant coming back and either changing things because it was acceptable and worked with the Iowa code, or not changing because it did not work.
Yeah, my original motion didn't have memo. I was trying to express we needed some feedback from our legal staff on these proposals.
In looking through the four situations that the draft mentions with rent abatement, it seems like the only one that would really need a 30-day would be to fail to make corrections as required in an inspection report. Everything else is something that really is
And they
pretty
get that.
immediate.
They get that already, yeah.
So, I mean, I think I sort of trust staff's discretion when it comes to how to apply these. I feel like they would give a fair period of time, unless it's an essential service, and then, they're going to be more aggressive about it. So, I mean, I think they're all right as they are, but that's...
Mark, you may comment on this one right now. I think we're trying to be efficient and not try and have this thing go back and forth in light of Tim's question and the motion on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris made a good point. That was kind of what I was thinking about, the 30-day notice. But in regard to the, under the owner's control and paragraph B, I would say, I think that's kind of inherent in here already. And plus, we've just copied the language out of the Code of Iowa, so I'd be a little hesitant to write something different than what the Code of Iowa authorizes us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only two that are different than the state code are C and D.
Yeah.
And C was added, we copied that from Iowa City. D was added here by us.
Yep.
But the
and
language in
there's already
D
a period of time after the inspection report that they have to make the changes.
It specifies, based on the type of violation, 30 to, I think, 180 days.
So I think that serves in item D there as.
Okay, has a motion been made and seconded?
Well, I appreciate your comments, Mark, and I'm feeling less confident now that we need to spend a lot more time on this.
Okay.
The goal of this is not to create additional rights for the landlord, but to reinforce what the Iowa Code already provides. And so I appreciate your clarification. I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
I would move that we direct staff to proceed with these changes as presented.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So the next step is, in 2 weeks, we will see the same ordinance, or this draft actually make as a first reading of the ordinance. And then I think, Sarah, you're going to just maybe follow up with an email telling people that this is moving forward as is, and there'll be public comment at the next meeting on September 10th. And then on the second and third readings, there'll be no comment. We'll just move forward.
So, Lad, if I might, again, thanks for coming tonight. If you think that we're still off base on this and you want to provide us with additional rationales for why we need to do something else, please let us know. You have some additional comment period.
Okay. All right. 42B, discussion regarding adding carbon monoxide detectors to requirements. Sarah?
Okay, so this is a result of the last conversation on short-term lodging. I think at the end of the conversation, somebody wanted to add carbon monoxide alarms, and this memo or staff report really is to clarify what the current code says and what we would need to do to add it to the code. So currently, the requirement for the carbon monoxide alarm is in the rental code, but it's only present when there are two dwellings that share the same furnace. So if it's a duplex and there's a furnace in one unit and not the other, they share the same air, there's a carbon monoxide alarm requirement. That's the only place that it is. In all new construction, the building and fire codes require it, so all new construction should be compliant. In 2016, the state legislature adopted an ordinance requiring carbon monoxide alarms in all buildings, so anything new. It's also retroactive, so legally, right now, all of our homes, rental and owner-occupied, should have carbon monoxide alarms everywhere. So moving forward, if we want to add that to the short-term lodging ordinance, we can do it quickly by referencing the state code on the checklist that you've discussed. We would just say on the checklist is in compliance with state carbon monoxide alarm requirements. Eventually, we as staff would like to get it into the rental code. We think that that's important, and we hope to be back later this fall, early winter with some updates to that code, but that's a bit of a lengthy process. There's a lot of outreach, there's 3 readings, there's a lot of public input that will be needed, and it may not jive with the adoption of the short-term lodging ordinance. So if you want to put them together, we would recommend adopting just on the checklist, referencing the state code. If you're willing to spend a little more time, we can add it to the rental code. The third option would be to adopt exactly what the state code says. We would have to, as staff, look at enforcement. That's quite a large process. We don't really know what it looks like. The state hasn't given us the ability to enforce it, so if we find violations, it really goes back to the state for enforcement. We're not sure, is it something, if we go to look at your new deck and we see that you don't have them, are we enforcing it, or do we have a process to go into each unit? We haven't really looked at that, so that would be quite the undertaking. So now we just need to decide if we want it in short-term lodging only or short-term lodging and all rentals.
That's the one I like. I think it's...
Which one?
To do it right, although it'll take a little longer, I think is a good way to go. It's hard to justify why you wouldn't have one in every rental unit. I'm surprised, that, and it's in terms of a dollar investment, it's not going to be a make it or break it point from anyone who has a rental. They're not that expensive. And this isn't a hardwired carbon monoxide detector. We're just talking battery operated. So I would move that we... Oh, sorry.
I have one kind of big picture question for Mark before we head down that path.
Sure. Okay.
So in general terms, and actually almost without fail, we can pass something that's more stringent than the state, but we have to abide by what the state has passed. And so it feels like in this, we're not doing what the state has passed. So can you kind of explain how this works within the context of what the state has responsibility for and whether we can or can't go beyond or not go as far as what they do?
The short answer is we can go beyond what the state has done, because we can have in our own, rental code, a requirement for carbon monoxide testers. Every building is supposed to have one now, even private residences. That is every building that has either a gas furnace or stove or fireplace. So if you have all electric, you don't need to have a carbon monoxide tester. But if the state's chosen to enforce this through the tax credit, the homestead. Thank you, homestead tax credit. And so when you buy a new house now, you have to sign that you're certifying that you have a carbon monoxide tester. That seems to me to be a very long-term and slow way of enforcing this. So, but we're not in conflict with the state law if we decide to do this. That's the thing. I mean, we can have our own ordinance as long as we're not conflicting with state law. We can kind of use the state law by saying, this is a requirement that everyone has this now, and this is how we're enforcing that. But we're really enforcing our own ordinance, not the state law, because the state fire marshal enforces the state law.
So I guess maybe I'm understanding you saying that really this is going beyond what the state is doing because they have their thing and we're going beyond that.
Yes.
And enforcing
Yeah.
this locally on our own.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's
But
okay.
in one way, we're not going beyond, like, because we wouldn't be requiring it in owner-occupied.
Right.
In not new owner-occupied dwellings.
But that's up to the state to enforce.
That part is.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also do a hybrid of the two, I think. You could put this on the checklist for now
Yeah.
until we get the rental code adopted, and then we could go back and revise the checklist to just remove that you have to comply with the state. Where we would add it in the rental code is already going to kind of mirror what's on the checklist or what's proposed to be on there, that fire life safety items as stated in the rental code. That's where the carbon monoxide requirement will go. So when we add that, it will already be on the checklist. At that point, we could just remove the requirement to comply with the state so it doesn't contradict. But that would kind of get you both tracks concurrently.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have a sense of the percentage of rental units now that have carbon monoxide detectors? Just a ballpark? Like half
Very
do?
small.
Very small.
Very small. It's not so right now they're required to have a dual sensor smoke alarm. You can have smoke and carbon monoxide, but most people haven't done that. So that would be one of the fixes to this, is just buy a different kind, and almost, I think it almost mimics exactly where the smoke detector requirements are. So it would just be replacing what they have, but most people don't have carbon monoxide alarms now.
That's interesting. With all these thousands of units that have come online.
Well, new ones
Yeah.
have to have it.
Yeah.
Right.
All new apartments have it.
As of when?
February 2018, according to the report.
Well, it's been in the building code since before that. I just don't know what
That's okay.
edition.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about our role of safeguarding the life and safety of these students that are here, I don't know what we would do in the course of a year that would have any more importance than this, so I think
Mechanical equipment failures are probably one of the things we find the most. So aging mechanical equipment, we require certifications on them when they get to a certain age or they appear to have issues. And the number of cracked heat exchangers and those kinds of things that we find where there are carbon monoxide issues already, I think that's why we as staff feel it's important enough to get it in the rental code anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
So if you added it to the checklist, walk us through what that would look like then. You have on the checklist, I mean, it's every time you do a rental inspection, you would say, does it comply with state code?
So I'm talking about the checklist for your short-term lodging. The checklist for that life safety inspection that happens, it would just say, is in compliance with state.
In the meantime,
In the
until the rental code also includes it.
So that would cover us for all the new short-term. If you do approve the short-term lodging ordinance soon, that would cover us
In the
until
interim, yeah.
the rental code comes up to date with it.
Yeah. I got it. So
I'm sorry, so because the state, it says, according to the report, the statute states a CO detector shall be in all residential buildings. So, and also further down it says, which includes owner-occupied and rental. So, based on that, every time you go in and inspect a rental, there should be a verification that there is a carbon monoxide detector, right, as part of your process. And do you do that? Do we do that right now?
We don't, because we don't have the authority through the state to enforce it. We can't penalize it. We could turn around and turn them into the state and have the
I
state
see.
come out and inspect, but we can't.
I get that now. Thank you. Okay.
ready for a motion?
Yes, I am.
Is David still on the line? David, you still there? Okay. This was one of the things he was interested
Yes, I am, but I'm here, but I have like a 3-second delay. So when I hear someone make a motion, I'm going to switch over to my faster phone, which makes it really hard for me to hear. That's the situation.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion if that's cool. I was going to move that we move option 2, which would require them in all registered rentals and dwellings used as guest lodging, but add that we should, in the interim, put on the checklist for short-term rentals, that they should be in compliance with the state code.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All right. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you, Sarah. Mark? Okay, we'll move on to item 43, Fleet Services, the B100 pilot program. Corey?
Good evening. Tonight I brought Rich Iverson, our fleet manager, with us. Hello. Rich led up this project, and he'll be doing our presentation, and he will introduce our representative from REG.
So we have David Slade. He is the Director of Biofuels
Technology and
Services. All right, so REG approached myself and set up an appointment to make a proposal that we look at a pilot project with some of our city vehicles to burn B99, or what we call B100, in 5 trucks. And in those 5 trucks would be equipped with technology that allows them to use the B100, which is 100% biodiesel. So in those trucks, equipped with technology to allow them to burn this fuel, which will reduce the carbon output significantly on these vehicles. So these are potential goals that we would like to see reduce our carbon intensity by up to 85%. Thereby saving about 111 metric tons per year for those 5 trucks. And that's equivalent to not burning about 100,000 pounds of coal in those years, per year in those 3 years. And then run this project for 3 years, evaluate, and then report back to council with our findings, whether we want to continue on with this project or not. So, REG's proposal, along with the company Optimus Technologies. REG is a local company headquartered here, and they're actually a global company, and they have 10 refineries in the United States. I believe 3 are in Iowa. And Optimus is a Pennsylvania-based company, and they're the ones that have developed this fuel management technology that will allow the trucks to use 100% biodiesel throughout the running process, even in the winter months. In agreement, REG has agreed to lease us a 12,000-gallon fuel dispensary at $1 per year during the pilot project, and that can continue on as long as we continue the pilot project. The Optimus collects and will collect data for us throughout this 3-year pilot project, and they'll give us a readout of how much time the trucks are burning 100% biodiesel, what's the reduction in our carbon output, and the Optimus has agreed to just give us a passcode into their data that they collect on our vehicles, and we can look at real time. They'll give us vehicle location and start and stop for all of our vehicles and fuel consumption. So the B100 project vehicles, the city selected 5 trucks. These are 4 tandem snowplow trucks. They're the big trucks that you see out plowing snow every winter, and then 1 single axle truck, and they met the requirements for the pilot project. These are diesel trucks, and currently during the summer months, about half of the year actually, they'll burn B20, which is biodiesel 20%, regular diesel 80%, that's blended by the Department of Transportation where we currently get our fuel. And in the winter, they burn B2, and the reason for that is because the performance of the B20 in the diesel engines is really good during the summer months when temperatures are warmer, and not quite as good in the winter months due to gelling factors. The Optimus system costs about $12,000 per truck. REG has agreed to equip our trucks each with this and pay the expense for the installation, the equipment, and what training there'll be for our technicians to deal with this system. The system is what I call kind of non-invasive in that it really doesn't alter the trucks. The trucks can still burn regular diesel. All it does is it manages the fuel system between two different tanks so that it starts with one fuel and switches to another for the majority of the operation. We can go to the next one. So here's the 5 trucks. They're fairly late model trucks, and what they'll receive is the Optimus system, which is a small unit that mounts to the frame, and it will take the fuel from a small tank and start the trucks on regular diesel. And as soon as the biodiesel is warmed up, even in very cold temperatures, switch it over to the biodiesel, and for the majority of its running time, it'll run on 100% biodiesel. And then the 5 trucks are, the oldest one is a single axle, and that's in the upper left-hand corner. And but they're all Tier 4. So actually they're DEF trucks, meaning they have diesel exhaust fluid, which reduces NOx gas from those. We can talk more about that later. We can go on. The benefits to the city. First of all, we would be the first city in Iowa to implement this technology. Makes us really on the cutting edge of some new things. There's a couple other cities that I've talked to that have implemented pilot projects. One is Public Works in Washington, D.C., and Chicago Parks District. They're both, Washington, D.C. just finished their pilot project today, and they're thrilled. They're planning to move forward with a significant order of trucks equipped with this technology. Of course, we're looking to reduce our emissions and support what we're trying to do as a sustainable community. There's some cost savings. The cost savings is going to be, first of all, that we're going to be able to do this pilot project and get it kicked off really at no out-of-pocket expense to start the project. And then the fuel savings, REG and the contract in exchange to pay for the Optimus technology, that we would buy our 100% biodiesel from REG through the pilot project, that they would be our sole provider for those 5 vehicles. And the cost savings would be that they're going to give us the fuel at 5 cents less than what we currently pay for what we would pay for our fuel from our current provider, is the way I'd like to say that. So, and then we're going to get a lot of data generation out of this and really know exactly where we're at with our carbon emissions. I was pleased to look at it, and those 5 trucks consume about 10% of the total volume of diesel fuel for the city. I know, so it's a big deal. It's a big deal for us. So we can go on. So taking action to combat climate change, I think that's important to all of us. I think this is a great way to check this out and see how we do. It's a pilot project. We'll have a lot of opportunity to see how well this works, and I believe that we'll be able to collect this data and look at it and report back at any time to anyone that's curious about how we're doing with this. It supports the council goals, and we'd be the first Iowa city certainly to utilize this, and we can share this with other cities and communities. Hopefully they'll come on board. The Optimus technology, basically you can kind of see it's 2 tanks. It's really could be 1 tank that's like a divider in it, and that heats the diesel, the biodiesel, converts it over after about up to 10 minutes in really cold weather. And then at the end of the cycle, when the truck gets shut off at the end of the day, it'll purge the biodiesel out and put regular diesel back in the lines for the next cold start. And that's all controlled by the Optimus system. And we can go on. Here's some of the things. So I talked to the Washington, D.C. They'd finished their pilot program. They ordered 36 new refuse trucks, 17 of which are going to be equipped with the Optimus system. And then the Parks District is still in the middle of they're about 8 months into their pilot program. And they have purchased twin trucks, so they have refuse trucks as well. So there's trucks that they are purchased at the same time. One is equipped with and one is not. So they're using one as a control. And then I have not heard back from the city of Pittsburgh yet, but Renewable Energy Group, they are equipping their vehicles. They now have a tanker fleet with the Optimus system to deliver the fuel, which translates into lower carbon for us in the delivery process. Okay. So we're ready for some questions and discussion.
So just out of curiosity, how many vehicles do we have in our fleet that could conceivably take advantage of this if this pilot program is successful and we want to move forward with continuing?
I think probably another 70 total vehicles in the fleet could potentially take, but that would be waiting for some of the technology to be developed for some of the other equipment, like some of our larger wheel loaders and tractors and some of that type of equipment. Trucks, I think they're all pretty close to being in a position to be equipped with this technology.
I know that petroleum diesel typically has a lot more pollutants than just CO2, so in biodiesel has less of those pollutants. Could you expand a bit on more than just like CO2 that's being reduced? I know that there's things like carbon monoxide, I think it's like sulfur oxide as well. Could you elaborate a bit on?
I think I'm going to turn that over to you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. That diesel exhaust, as anybody who's been behind a bus or a dump truck knows, can have a lot of particulate matter or soot, which is the black smoke that you'll see. Carbon monoxide and then hydrocarbons. So the smell, if you smell the exhaust, that's hydrocarbon emissions. Those are all regulated by the EPA. And then NOx or nitrogen oxides. So it is true that in older engines without emissions control devices, that biodiesel has a really substantial reduction in those harmful emissions. These vehicles actually all have emissions control devices on them that were mandated by the EPA. So they have a filter to take out the particulates. They have catalytic converters to take out the hydrocarbons and the NOx. So in this case, the tailpipe emissions probably won't be affected measurably or noticeably. So really, because they're newer vehicles, so the major benefit will be the lower fossil carbon or the lower carbon intensity of the fuel.
Thanks.
But older engines, definitely, you can see a dramatic benefit by including biodiesel.
Yep.
Given the fact that David's got a 3-second lag, I want to see, David, do you have any questions you want to ask so you can jump in here before we have any more questions from council?
Thanks for asking. No, I don't think I do at this moment.
Okay. Other questions?
You mentioned you have refineries around the globe, but is there some reasonable expectation that the fuel we'd be using is more local in nature?
Yes, that very good question, because we are a big company in that. In the biodiesel world, we're a big company. In the fuel world, we're still a very small company. Rich mentioned that there are 3 biorefineries in Iowa. So we have a biodiesel plant in Newton, Iowa, one in Mason City, Iowa, and one in Ralston, Iowa. We also have one just across the border in Albert Lea, Minnesota. So those 4 plants are all within a little bit over about 70 miles of here. It is 100% guaranteed the biodiesel will come from those plants. And if you imagine just the cost of trying to bring in the biodiesel from elsewhere, it's not. Even if we wanted to, it would be cost prohibitive.
Sure.
So yeah, you can be guaranteed it will come from an Iowa plant. If something really amazing happens and all three of them happen to be down at the same time, which has never ever happened, it might come from just across the border in Minnesota, but that would be the farthest away that it would come from.
Okay, thank you.
And just to reassure you on the feedstocks too, for logistics reasons as well, we buy our feedstocks, our fats and oils, as close to the plants as we can. So those are typically, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Minnesota type supply.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
REG is a great employer and business in our community, and what an outstanding opportunity to do a partnership. I'm thrilled to be a test city for this technology, so very, very excited for the opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to thank REG for picking us to, as Tim said, you're a great corporate citizen. You give back to the community, but it's just really exciting to be one of the first city in the state, first of all, and this is just a test. This is not like we're guaranteeing any results, but the point is that to go through this is really and they're belling up to the bar too. They're paying for virtually everything. Our costs are almost zero. With that said, I just have a couple of quick questions, just from a standpoint, and it's not to pick anything apart, but I noticed in the contract there's like a $2,500 a year subscription fee that Optimus charges. That's every year. It's not 3. Assuming that REG is paying for that as well too. It's not very much. It's very small, but I was just curious if that was. It's not stated that way in the contract. I was just curious. So I have to sign the contract, so I was just going to make sure that.
We can confirm that, but I assume we are. And that is the data access subscription fee.
You're right.
That Optimus charges.
Yep.
I will say it's really comprehensive information. It's really we have them on our trucks now as of the last few months, and it's really neat to see all the data that comes off the ECM from the trucks.
I'm kind of a number nut, so apologize, but the cost actually is about $13,200 per truck. So I presume again the $12,000 is round numbers. You're just paying for everything, I presume. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And then last question is, or two questions: who, after the test, if the city decides they don't want to proceed, who pays to remove the equipment or restore it back to the original condition, assuming worst case scenario that we say, hey, we just don't want to go with it? Is that
REG would pay for the cost to remove the equipment? Yep.
Okay.
And we can reuse it. Most of it can be used in a different vehicle. So
I hope that's not the case, but just curious.
Yeah.
And then does the city own that equipment post? So let's say it's successful or moving forward. The city just keeps that equipment as a gift from REG, is that correct? And we just go forward?
Yeah.
Exclusive of the 12,000-gallon tank?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tank we will keep. Or let you continue to use.
Yeah, okay.
So that, as long as the technology holds and the equipment is in good shape, we can just move it to the next vehicle. So when the first of the 5 trucks reaches its end of its life cycle, we'll just take the system off and move it to the next. If it should happen during the pilot project, it would just move to the next truck and keep that in the pilot project. So we have the 5 trucks in there at all times. We want to gather that much for the 3-year period as we possibly can.
And would this system work on Cyride?
Yeah, it would be. Each one has to be installed per the vehicle. So there may be some spacing issues for the tanks or piping changes. But yeah, this kind of technology would work very well on buses. Most of the early adopters have been in work trucks, refuse trucks or container trucks. But the buses would be a really good application for this as well.
We have a few of those.
You have a few? Yeah, we do. Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to take a minute. We need to thank staff, too, for taking the initiative on this project and recognizing the priorities of the council and the community. So this is exciting to be a part of the pilot project. Thank you for the work you guys have put in on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. You have Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Ames, Iowa. So it's really a great thing for us. And that's part of our motivation here as a business located in Ames. We really wanted to try to help do something mutually beneficial. So.
Should have those alphabetical, though, okay? It'd be Ames.
Ames, Chicago, Washington.
There you go. All right. Given the fact that we're going to be spending a little bit of money and taking a entering into contracts, open up any public comment. Anyone want to address council on this particular topic from the audience? Seeing none, close public comment and entertain a motion.
Can we do this in one motion?
Alternative 1A and B, is that what you're?
Yes.
Let's, give me a second here. If you don't mind, let's do it in 3 individuals, because one, we're doing we're waiving purchasing policy. Let's just do one at a time. Entertain a motion on resolution approving request to equip 5 existing snow plow trucks.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call?
Nelson.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain motion on resolution waiving purchasing policies pertaining to bidding and approving a sole source contract with Optimus Systems to install systems on selected city vehicles.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call?
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
And the last one would be motion on resolution waiving purchasing policies pertaining to bidding and approving a sole source contract with REG to be the sole provider of biodiesel for the 5 selected trucks throughout the 3-year pilot program.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Corriere.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And will you be, will there be like signs or placards or something like that would, that kind of showcasing this, or is,
I think we can
just saying
make
it's
that
100% biodiesel. I mean, I think the point
Yes.
is that we want to celebrate the fact that we're really trying, the city is really trying to implement the council goals. We're committed to it. I'll let staff decide and administration decide in terms of what branding there is.
Yeah, we'll come with some signage, and hopefully, in 6 months or a year, and your council highlights, we'll put out some information on the data we're collecting, so you can see that.
It might be helpful, too, on the sustainability page of the city's website to highlight this, because this is really a remarkable impact on our sustainability goals, so I think we should put it on the website, too.
What figure did you say, 10% of the diesel?
I was surprised myself.
That is amazing, yeah.
Yeah. They're just very busy vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah, they work a lot.
And REG, please tell your board, whoever, moving, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to the partnership and
Thank
your
you.
valued partner in City of Ames. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item 44, resolution approving or denying the preliminary plat for the Iowa State University Research Park Phase 4. And I guess, is there any questions for staff? Otherwise, we can move forward on this one, I would think. Unless, Kelly, you want to point anything out that we should be aware of?
Not really. I think I noted in the report that most of the public improvements are taken on by the city. Really only the sidewalks are developer responsibilities. That's part of an existing development agreement.
Okay. I will then open up public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, and I will note that President and CEO of the Research Park is here, Mr. Sanders. Thank you for coming. Any questions for him? Seeing none, entertain a motion on resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Betcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. We'll move on to item 45, discussion of vacation rentals, which is tabled from July 23rd.
We don't have any new material to present. You discussed this as the mayor said at a prior meeting, and the council asked for it to come back. The staff report just outlines different options that you could choose. Depending on your action, it may or may not affect the later item about whether you want to adopt ordinances affecting the zoning ordinance, the new guest lodging ordinance, and the rental code related to vacation rentals and short-term rentals overall.
And Mark provided you with a memo, too, speaking to a question you would ask.
And just for quick rundown of the options, the original proposal up until April was to look at this as again a vacation lodging use is when the owner of the property does not live there ever. It is solely used for transient guests. There's no property owner present during any of or significantly during the year anyways, which distinguishes it from the other uses which are viewed as accessory to the homeowner's use of the property or the property's use of the property. There is a regular resident present, may not be during the stay, but at least throughout the year there's a regular resident present. And the options in here talk about using special use permits to regulate, not allowing them in any zone, breaking it out and maybe allowing them in higher density or commercial zones, but not in lower density zones. Also options where if there was a geographic constraint, you could look at an overlay that restricted them. And at this point, we're just looking for direction on how to proceed.
Are we taking input from audience tonight, or?
Yes. Because what happened was last time, as you remember, the motion died, and then it was moved to be reconsidered. It was unwound, so I consider this to be basically we're back to square one again.
Actually, Mayor, the motion didn't die.
It was failed, I mean.
No, the motion passed. My motion was that we not allow vacation lodging citywide. That passed, and then because Chris wasn't here, we voted to reconsider.
Thank you for the clarification.
Oh, thanks for calling me out.
No pressure.
It was your fault.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
So we asked the question of staff about whether, if people are following along or have been watching this, about whether we could do something that would essentially grandfather in those that have been operating what we would call vacation rentals. And it sounds like, no, we can't just, unfortunately, legally, we can't just allow those who have been doing it and not allow future folks to do so. So Mark, I don't know if you want to just touch on that, because that was something that's a line of inquiry we had gone down.
Yeah, and I sent the council a memo on this, and I just viewed it as equal protection problems with, it's a constitutional issue that, I think it's very difficult for us to, would be very difficult for us to defend that if there were an equal protection challenge to this. We're taking something that's really unlawful right now, even though we know it's going on, and saying, oh, those people can continue to operate these businesses and do so lawfully now, but nobody else can. I think that's a distinction that would be really hard to defend, just because, under equal protection, you have to treat people similarly. If you make a distinction, there has to be a rational basis for it. I think that would fail the rational basis test, because we're, again, I just think of trying to argue this in front of a judge and say, well, yeah, they were illegal. We let them be legal, but we didn't let anyone else do it. I think that would be a very difficult position for us to be in. So
I was just going to say, one of the alternatives you mentioned that you thought would maybe fly would be the separation distance of the limits that were provided by.
Yeah, and that was just a thought, separation distance, as long as you're letting, people apply. And I think we could give preference to people that were already operating if we wanted to do that and say, well, okay, some people were operating already, so, if we get within a certain area, we've got 2 people applying, this person's already been engaged in the business, we're gonna process their application, but not the other person, because they, they're wanting to do this, but they haven't, invested in it yet. I think we can make a rational distinction on that basis. But but again, that's allowing everybody to apply for them within the rules that we set, separation distances, requirement of an LOC, or whatever conditions you want to put on it. But that's, since everyone has a shot at it that way, that it's a different situation.
I'm going to take a shot at this. I'm going to move that we direct. Oh, Oh, I thought you'd done that already, sorry.
All right, open public comment. If anyone wants to address council on this topic, and I would ask you to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes.
Ryan Hauk, 65697 190th Street, Nevada. Wanted to come with another idea. First, I have always said options 1, 3, 4, and 5, maybe 6 if there is a 6. I was all in support of those. I wanted to just throw out an idea, though, something that was in the staff report, but it wasn't fully conceptualized, was to present a percentage cap, or maybe an easier way would just be to create a finite number of special use permits that are allowed for the situation. I think in doing so, if that was to go, it addresses several issues or thoughts that have come up here. One being social, economical, or social aspects of a neighborhood. And number 2 is affordable housing and how that could potentially take away stock. But if we limit the number, maybe it's not a bigger effect. So I just wanted to give that out there for consideration. And yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Shannon Stack. I'm at 1613 24th Street here in Ames. I did have a question, or actually a comment for you guys. As I've been researching stuff over the last couple weeks, there are local hotels currently using the platform, and ISU is also working with Verbo, which is another vacation rental company. I don't know if I want to read my email today. So I'm wondering if you guys are going to ban the entire idea of all vacation rentals. What's going to happen to, I mean, we have colleges, we have the college working with people, we have hotels.
Can we respond to this one? I mean, I think the answer on that would be that a hotel or Iowa State is zoned so that they're allowed that use, right? A hotel is zoned so that they're allowed short-term use, right? What we're talking about is the zoning that's currently residential use.
Verbo, though, is actually, when you go into ISU, they're actually, it's homes. It's not on campus. So basically, ISU is kind of using a vacation platform to use for people's houses here in town, is how I saw it on the website. So they're kind of working together. So it's not their own separate properties. It's houses that are in Ames, or apartments or condos, that ISU is working with and advertising.
ISU owns them, you mean?
No, like it's like I could apparently use ISU and another vacation platform to advertise for parents or students coming to town.
I see.
So
I don't know how that works. Interesting.
But that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Go ahead, Chris.
We direct staff to prepare a text amendment in higher density zones to allow them in single-family zones with 1,000-foot separation distance and require an LOC.
Second.
So where did you come up with the number of the distance?
In my head, I counted 85-foot lots and thought that seemed like a reasonable distance. That's one every almost quarter of a mile.
Can you go back for me? You restate again what the whole motion was?
Sure. To allow vacation rentals in higher density zones, and I don't want to list all of those, but you listed, allow in single-family zones, traditionally single-family zones, which you did spell out under option 2, with 1,000-foot separation distance and require an LOC.
So allow them in high-density zones with no separation.
Wait, correct.
Is there a second?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amber
Yeah,
seconded.
thank you. Okay.
So to allow them in high-density zones with no separation, but in
Correct.
in single zones to allow them with the 1,000
Yes.
foot. Okay.
Yes.
And you said higher density zones, so are you
not
above?
listed as options in option 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think option 2 would be the basis of the conversation, where we very clearly define what we view as single-family, highest and most likely used in those zones, whether their label is low density or not. And then we have the list of commercial and medium-high density listed later on in that same one. So, and that's without a special use permit for any vacation lodging uses?
In any zone, any of
No.
So it's, okay.
No.
No, what?
None,
No, not required.
not required.
Wait, what?
No special use.
That was
permit.
your,
Oh,
that was your,
oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my question.
because they would need an LOC.
Oh,
Right.
and when you say the 1,000-foot vacation, that's 1,000 feet between vacation rentals, between rentals?
vacation.
Yeah, I assume vacation rentals.
Did staff's first suggestion include the special use permit
Yes.
in addition to the LOC? Yes.
It's always been a given that it would have to meet rental code because it doesn't have a homeowner in it.
Right, so the LOC.
So the LOC is a given.
Given, and then also.
And in addition, you have to have a special use permit. And the order would be, you have to get
So why take that out?
I'm okay with that.
If we
Yes.
keep it in there with
Yes.
the special
Amend
use
the
permit?
motion?
That's
You wanna-
Yes, I will amend that motion to require a special use permit.
Second.
Yeah, I think that's helpful.
David, I know you got a 3-second lag. Do you have any comments or questions on this motion?
Kelly, could you clarify for council what you said, just to make sure the public and you under?
all right, so this is how I would understand.
With, when you said even when they're not zones that even aren't,
So if you have access to the staff report, districts intended for single-family uses principally, or the conservation of single-family uses, and we listed those off as RL, FSRL, PRD, UCRM, and OFC. And OFC is the single-family conservation overlay. It actually applies to a part of a medium-density zone, but that area has always been set aside as conserving
I
single-family
understand,
homes.
so it might be medium dense.
So those districts for sure would require the special use permit and the 1,000-foot distance based on that motion.
Okay.
As we go and try to, if that passes, we try to go and incorporate that into an ordinance, you would see the ordinance, you'd see the table with the list to make sure that that complies with what everybody is thinking would be the requirement. And then specifically what would not require the 1,000 feet and the special use permit would be the standalone RM zone, the RH zone, the FSRM zone, and that's probably a questionable one. It's mostly apartments, but there are attached single family in it. Neighborhood commercial, community commercial, downtown commercial, campus town commercial, and downtown gateway commercial. There's a few other zones that we didn't talk about in here, but those are the general idea of the two categories you fall into. I think one that you would have to decide is what is village residential, because it is everything. It's commercial, medium density, and single family.
Kelly, could you expand a little bit on what would be involved in the special use permit?
Yes, the special use permit is a tool that we use in the zoning ordinance in basically every zoning district for a variety of different uses. Special use permit is meant to deal with unique conditions or operations of a use. It might be site related, it might be how someone conducts that use. You have to apply to the city, you have to give us information about the property and how you would operate the business or the use. It is reviewed with city staff for compliance with known zoning standards. However, you must go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a noticed public hearing, and you have to be able to demonstrate consistency with basically general compatibility requirements. So they are things that are not going to be defined as clearly as a 1,000-foot separation standard. They're going to be, are you in keeping with the neighborhood character? Are you going to have traffic or other nuisance issues that would be unique to the use that don't likely occur with other uses in the neighborhood? It allows you to consider either the individual unique nature of it or maybe cumulative issues of many of the same thing happening really in a concentrated area rather than spread out, where one might be okay, but 6 of them are not okay. Very commonly, a church is the type of use where a church is different. It's on a larger lot, has different hours of operation than homes, but they're in residential areas very frequently. So the special use permit lets you kind of understand how the layout of the site would work and how hours and use would work. We do this with special home occupations sometimes where someone has a very small business that they can run out of their home. That goes to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for review and notice to neighbors as well. So we have a good track record of how this works. Everyone is different, so it's maybe not completely predictable, but it does have a system to at least evaluate everything.
So with the letter of compliance, that's going to have more objective criteria.
That's 100% objective criteria.
But with the special use permit, the way you described it seems a bit fuzzy to me.
It's intentionally fuzzy.
Yeah, and could you just, one more question is, could you give us an example of a situation that you could see the special use permit being denied, just so we can wrap our brains around how this would work in practice?
I think there's the other benefit, and we're doing licensing, so you would have an opportunity if someone was operating a nuisance property to not renew the license. Oftentimes, special use permits do give you recourse to say if someone's not following through on the conditions, that you can go back and revoke that permit. So there's a layer of protection that if someone is not doing what they said they're going to do with that permit, you can give them notice and go back to the Board of Adjustment to reconsider their approval and revoke that. Now, the licensing, again, would probably be an easier way to deal with that in this case. I would say the most likely situation is that maybe it's a unique property, that there's no parking on the street, there's no parking on the site, there's some attribute about the location or block. Maybe it's a block that already has some unique or non-conforming uses that have a lot of traffic or other nuisance issues already. And it's the cumulative issues that would say this just isn't the right property for that to be here. Maybe if it was 3 blocks away, they wouldn't have those same concerns.
So it's, in essence, it's sort of a check or a safety valve to make sure that the concerns of the neighborhood are being respected.
Yes, but it has to be, so it's not a vote of we just don't want this here. That's a tough place for the Zoning Board of Adjustment to be. It's not a poll, it's not a vote of whether we want the use here. It's whether the way it's described it would function is consistent with the city's expectations and the general criteria of how we expect a neighborhood to operate.
And so if someone's application for the special use permit was declined, what recourse does the owner have? Would they appeal that to us, the district court?
District court. So the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the applicant must present the information that we can make the findings to approve their application. So if they do that and the Zoning Board of Adjustment doesn't agree with that, they would have to state their reasons why, and then they would have an appeal right to district court.
Okay, thank you.
So one other question, and maybe I know the answer to this, but I live in an older neighborhood, and we don't typically have homeowners associations in older neighborhoods. So how does this impact the balance of where vacation rentals can be? Many of the newer neighborhoods in the city have homeowners association that probably have covenants that don't allow rentals. I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong.
I would say that's
I don't know.
unlikely.
It's unlikely?
I would say, except for in a common interest development where maybe you're sharing walls and have townhomes, something along those lines. I would say normal single-family detached neighborhoods probably do not have restrictions on rental properties.
Okay.
Now, we're not saying this is a rental property. This is a lodging use. That's not a residential use. So I'm not going to guess what people's covenants say about a residential use versus a lodging use. I'm just saying rental properties themselves are definitely residential.
So then, in theory, there could be homeowners association covenants that would not allow this kind of use, and those would supersede the zoning that we...
Right, but they have to be enforced by the homeowners association. City does not have every covenant in the city, nor are we likely in a party to its enforcement. So we highly unlikely to be enforcing those covenants. It'd be up to the neighborhood.
Chris, is your intent of the motion where it says 1,000 foot, within 1,000 foot, so would that be the radius, and then you would strike a 1,000-foot circle around. So I just went on Beacon Schneider just to try and get some idea on distances. So if you said it was within 1,000 foot, that means that any place within 360 degrees of that, within 1,000 foot, that's how staff would measure that. Is that correct?
That was the way the motion was put forth.
All right. So just for kicks and giggles, I went ahead and this is very unscientific, don't take this to the bank. But the distance from Knapp Street to Storm Street is 1,050 feet. From Ash to Beach is 1,400 feet. You start overlaying, depending upon where these vacation rentals might be, you might only get 3 or 4 in the scan area, depending upon where they're located, and some may be eliminated because they're too close, essentially. So at 1,000 foot, as long as it's not just 1,000 foot down the street, but you can have one in the next block. If it's a 1,000-foot radius, that's basically a 2,000-foot diameter circle, which is a pretty good size, area.
And we're basing this on how soon you put in your request for your LOC if you don't already have one, and your special use permit. So first come, first served, and we then measure from those as they get their approvals.
But I like it, it's objective, and limiting.
David, any questions or comments on this one?
I think he's gone.
I think we lost.
I think he's gone, yeah.
Well, is there any way to get him back? Because last time we voted,
So before you
we wanted to have a full council, essentially.
Also, before you vote, can I just clarify a couple other things that are in option 2 to see that whether, again, they were intentionally left out or not? One of those was that the Planning Commission recommended originally that if this was allowed in apartments, that there was a cap on the number of apartments.
No, I'm listening. No questions right now.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
So again, just assuming we were modeling this after option 2 a little bit, the Planning and Zoning Commission had recommended originally that if you allowed this use in apartments to have some controls on that, and I think it was a 10% cap on the total number of units on an RA, on a high density or an apartment property that could be that way. And that was partially to preserve housing options and not have an apartment building turn into a hotel, especially if they're not requiring a special use permit for that use. So
my motion intended to include
the
that.
intent was to kind of bring along all those other
Yes.
vacation lodging standards that had originally been drafted. Essentially, you're saying special use permit with a 1,000-foot separation requirement. Okay.
All right, you ready for the vote? There are questions, comments?
I don't really support this option. I mean, the vacation lodging, period. I think it's just easier to say we aren't going to have that. But the limitations that are part of the motion will allow me to vote for it. But I really don't think it's a good idea.
All right, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
David, did you?
Have you called for nay yet?
Okay. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thank you. Motion passed 5-1.
Okay, so with that direction, we have to go back and amend the ordinances. So we're not to that item on the hearing list, but we will be recommending that you table the hearings again to allow us to amend them before first reading, rather than proceed with first reading tonight. Okay, so I'll come back to remind you on that one.
Good.
All right, anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 46, hearing on vacation of the 180-foot by 16-foot alley right-of-way north of Lincoln Way and east of Elm Avenue. I declare that public hearing to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address council on this particular topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance to vacate right-of-way.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Okay, roll call, please.
Martin?
Aye.
Garten?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Reading Hanson?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Okay, item 47, declare the public hearing on the 2018-2019 asphalt street pavement improvements on the final plan, specifications, awarding contract to Construct Incorporated in the amount of $1,002,621 to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, close public hearing. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan, specifications, and awarding the contract to Construct in the amount of $1,002,621.40.
So moved?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Garten?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Reading Hanson?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Okay, item 48, hearing on 415 Stanton Avenue contract rezoning agreement and council. The staff has asked for this to be continued. There's more work and research, so I'm going to declare the public hearing to be open and need a motion to continue the hearing until September 10th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You're not taking a public hearing?
No. We'll continue it. The public hearing will be continued on September 10th. Item 49, here, declare the public hearing on amendment to adaptive reuse major site development plan for North Grand Mall. Actually, let me back up. Does council have any questions on this particular topic with staff regarding the North Grand Mall project before we go to public hearing?
No.
Okay, I'll declare a public hearing on the amendment to adaptive reuse major site development plan for North Grand Mall to be open. Anyone in the audience want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, close public hearing, and I would entertain a motion on resolution approving adaptive reuse major site development plan with stipulations recommended by staff.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, discussion? Roll call.
Nelson?
Aye.
Reading Hanson?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Garten?
Aye.
Okay, item 50, declare the public hearing on proposed amendments to the zoning code, Chapter 29, and the rental code, Chapter 13, and creation of a new Chapter 35 to establish zoning definitions, standards, and enforcement procedures for permitting licensing of guest lodging in specific zoning districts to be opened. Is there anyone who wants, in the audience wants to address council on this topic?
Are we tabling this one?
This is the one
We're tabling.
Kelly wants you to table.
Yeah.
So the hearing will be next time? Or when they bring back the vacation lodging stuff with it?
Okay, so I entertain a motion to continue this. Otherwise, you got to republish everything.
Right, continue hearing.
I would move we continue.
Public hearing.
The
Did you
public,
open the hearing?
I did.
Okay.
continue the public hearing on this topic, what, until,
To September 10th.
until September 10th?
Second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed or abstaining? Carried. All right, item 51, hearing on nuisance assessments. Declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, close public hearing. Entertain a motion on resolution assessing costs of snow and ice removal and certifying assessments to Story County Treasurer.
So
So moved. Second.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call?
Reading Hanson?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Batchor?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Garten?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Okay, item 52, first passage of ordinance establishing parking regulations for Scenic Valley subdivision, 4th edition. Any questions for staff on this one? I'll open up public input on this particular topic, which is establishing no parking zones on essentially the east side of the streets in Scenic Valley. Anyone want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, close public input. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance.
Move on first.
Second.
Roll call.
Poirier.
Aye.
Becher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Lee Hanson.
Aye.
Very good. Moving on now to, we have two letters for your consideration. First is letter from Ames Bicycle Coalition, August 21st, requesting to add more bikes may use full lane signs on various streets around the city.
I would move that we
You go to
get a
memo.
memo from
the
staff,
yeah.
from traffic on this item.
Okay? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or
Aye.
abstaining? Carried. And the second one is letter from Mainstream Living, request to consider selling property at 1417 Douglas Avenue to Mainstream Living.
I think you want a memo on this, too?
All right, I will move to refer this to staff for a memo.
Second.
Okay? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed or abstaining? Carried. All right. And also, council, I did pass on to you, there's a letter on my desk, I came in, you all got a copy of it that was addressed to me and the city council, so it's just yours for information. No action necessary. All right, council comments. Devin, talk to us about Iowa State University and schools in session, huh?
Yeah, first day of school. I got more homework than I wanted to, but I've been hearing a lot of great things from student government, cabinet members, from my fellow classmates. A lot of people are excited, a lot of people aren't, but that's okay. It happens every year. So far, we've had cabinet meetings, and tomorrow we'll have the first student government meeting. And there's been a lot of questions from to me for stuff that the city's been doing, and I've been very happy to answer. And it seems that students are going to be pretty engaged this year, at least more than I've felt they have in the past. So I'm really excited about that. Looking forward to the rest of the year for sure. So
Good.
Thank you.
Gloria?
And what are you looking forward to doing on Wednesday?
It is Welcome Fest. Yes.
Yes.
From 5:30 to 8:30. Yes. Yeah. 5:30. Yeah.
The free stuff runs out. So
Yeah.
it's an 8:30
Get there
there,
early.
so get there
Yeah.
early.
So a number of us will be participating in the ISU Welcome Fest. I hope that we get a lot of new students to learn more about the Ames community. It's always a good time. In the past, I'm changing subjects. In the past, I have asked that we review our use of a quitclaim deed that had sexist language in it. And I've recently received a communication, I believe, that Bronwyn also received that, from a constituent who was concerned about some of our forms and policies for parks and recreation that aren't gender neutral. And it makes me wonder whether it's possible for us to do a review of our city forms to ensure that the forms we're using are in line with inclusionary language and that we are not creating gendered language unnecessarily in those documents. Now, I don't know what that process would be, whether that's something that I would move referred to the city manager's office.
Yes.
So I would move that we request the city manager's office to have staff review our documents, our forms that the public, or actually I won't even specify the public. I would ask that we review the forms that the city is currently using for gender neutral language.
I'll second.
So,
Memo.
do you have any idea what kind of time commitment this is, and also what the priority of this would be?
I don't have a priority. I would leave that up to Steve to decide where it fits in with the work. It seems like a long-term kind of project that could be done in increments. And in fact, as we get documents that come in front of us, if we're all watching for that sort of thing, we could flag things. I noticed tonight that the document from REG, the contract, refers to ladies and gentlemen unnecessarily. And I'm assuming that's a form that is typically used. And it's not that I think we need to make all the changes at once, but I think a conscious effort to look for those unnecessary gendered references would be in line with what the Human Relations Commission is promoting for inclusionary practice.
So is that an example of the language that you find troublesome, the reference to ladies and gentlemen?
Well, that's one example, but the example that we received from the constituent had to do with, was it registration for?
It's for classes, for Parks and Rec classes, to declare a gender on that form. And you know, I mean, I guess if we did want that to be an option, there should then be an option for no gender, or, you know, to decline that question, yeah.
But we have activities that are gender-oriented. I think this is bigger than what we may realize that we're going down. I don't know.
I think it, I mean, as a big issue, yes, but I'm just looking at the form.
Tim, go ahead, Tim.
Is this about language or about changing the way in which our Parks and Recreation does business?
Well, I don't know that there are any gender-specific, are there?
I'm not aware of
programs.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Are there?
I'm not asking for a change of the way anybody is doing business. I'm asking for a review of the forms that we use and for the language that's used in those forms. So I'm not looking at that bigger systematic change at this point.
And this is just a memo that would include
No,
the
we're not asking
difficulty?
for remember, you're asking us to do it.
Oh, I thought we were asking for a memo. That's fine.
Well, I
Review
think it's, you know, as you find them.
Yeah, review the,
Sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
Everyone clear on the motion?
Are you asking me? I don't believe it's a big thing. I mean, we have hundreds of forms, so it'll take a while to sift through them, but it's always good for the departments to look at the forms they're using and see if we brought them up to date. Now, it is an interesting question what Tim asked, what general neutral is. I mean, I understand asking someone, that's probably, I don't know why we have that on there, but any reference to male or female would be inappropriate, is that what you're saying? It may be for, I don't know.
Well, there are. I mean, I'm thinking of like adult soccer, for example. It's co-ed, but there can be no more than 3 women
Yeah,
on the field.
yeah.
That,
So you don't mean
or,
that
I'm sorry,
necessarily, right?
no, there has to be 3 women on the field at one time.
Right.
But that's like the team roster,
Right,
not when you sign
so-
up for the
I just want to know the definition, and we'll know the blatant ones, but there may be subtleties I don't understand.
I think that in any case where we are specifying gender,
Yeah, definitely, I understand.
we should either be saying it's necessary to
Required for the
specify
program.
gender for this program, or we remove references to gender. For example, in a situation like this contract where it says ladies and gentlemen, it didn't even need to be in there. So remove it. The third option is what Bronwyn said, which is if you do want to have something like that, you add the category not specified for those people who prefer not to indicate a gender.
Or who feel gender neutral.
Right.
Staff, I think they're clear on what you're trying to
We'll
accomplish.
give our best shot, and hopefully we'll get it right, and you'll catch one if we don't, right?
Yeah, I personally think that it's something that all of us could just easily be looking for as we see things.
All right, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anything else?
Nope.
David?
Hello. I'd like to rewind briefly to the vacation lodging, and I just wanted to explain that my vote for no was simply because I preferred a solution that would simply keep the vacation lodging out of the single-family zoning districts. But the motion that passed came very close. It had good support, and I think that that's a good outcome. And I want to congratulate all the people who have spent so much time trying to come up with a solution that works for the community. I think this is something that will work in the long run, and I'm happy about that.
Okay.
That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Tim?
Glad Chris was here to make that motion. You found, once again, found a way to help us reach compromise, so thank you for doing that. Nothing else.
Chris?
Welcome Fest got covered, nothing tonight.
Well, we got our new game day parking ordinance going to effect here, and I've seen a lot of notices on Facebook and things like that, but now, if people say that we didn't warn them, we can say, well, were you not watching your city council meeting when Bronwyn reminded everyone about the parking? But also, go Cyclones. That's all.
Nothing for me.
Well, just to build on what you just shared, I did get a email from Jamie Pollard too, saying they're going to be sending out a blanket email and trying to get that, word out to the fans to try and avoid that. And I said, I hope there were no tickets having to be issued, that there was enough, notice. But the point is that it's in place. So.
Also to the other schools too. I think the visiting schools are trying to put information out.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.